There's a video I made a little bit ago where essentially I made the confession that a lot of the videos I'd been making didn't seem to jump at me the same way that past videos had. What I mean by that is that there are certain videos that I've made where I just felt a burning need to make them. There are certain stories I've written, and even there are certain things that I've said to people where I feel like I have to get them out. Like there's this internal burning motivation to expel something from my system. But I confessed in that video that I hadn't really felt that for a while. And a few months have passed since that video came out, and honestly, nothing's really changed. For the most part, a lot of the videos I put out are because it feels like a good idea to make them. Like oftentimes I'll have some thoughts about a subject, like I've made a couple Kafka videos recently, and those are just a result of me reading his books. And I'll just stand in front of my green screen, I'll make some notes, and I will talk about the books, and I'll talk about my thoughts on them. And really, that same sort of thought process extends to a lot of other videos that I've made lately. And so with this video, I just wanted to reflect a little bit on this. I wanted to reflect on the idea of creating through habit as opposed to through motivation. Or rather, another way of looking at it is that I want to talk about the idea of creating through discipline as opposed to inspiration. I don't really need to go into great detail about this idea, but it feels like there is always this idea present whenever you discuss the act of creation, whenever you discuss the act of creating art. There's always this idea there that you need to have this huge burning inspiration within you before you make something. And this is something I've seen before from other people. Like I remember reading this one time where there was like a poem that Bukowski wrote where he basically said, "Don't try." And what he's saying to me seems to be about inspiration, where basically, unless you really feel this strong inspiration, unless you really feel like you're touched by a goddess, unless you really feel like you have something great to put out into the world and something great to share, then you shouldn't do it. And that's stupid. Like just flat out, like that's not how the real world works. Sometimes you can just have this powerful feeling that you need to expel something from you. You need to exercise these demons, you need to get them out onto paper. Sometimes you just have these thoughts and you need to capture them on film. But then other times you just do the work because it's what you do. You know, I think that you are a creator because you choose to create. And I'm reminded of something that Neil Gaiman once said, where he said that whenever he looked back at his writing, he couldn't tell when he was inspired and when he was writing because it was what he had to do. Because I think that really whenever you do anything, there is a time of great enjoyment to it. Typically speaking, whenever I make a video, there is always a time when like I feel super excited about it, even if it's like when I'm at the finish line and I'm only super excited because I'm about to finish it. And then also there are times whenever I make a video, and this extends to pretty much anything I've ever made, there are times when it just feels like a drag and, you know, you don't really want to do it. Like there are times whenever I'll look at my video timeline and I'll be like, oh crap, I have, 20 minutes of footage that I have to fill up. But really, I think that I've kind of learned this through just creating out of habit. I've kind of learned that there's a sort of weightlessness that comes to the act of creation. If you just do it regularly, then it feels much easier to slip back into. Even if you don't feel this burning passion for what you're doing at that very moment, I still think that it's a lot easier to do as opposed to stopping and starting and trying to get into something because you have inspiration and then stopping because you don't have inspiration. So I think there's a sort of weightlessness that comes from it that's awesome. And I also think that there's just the entire growth aspect that comes from it. I think that a key part of growing as an artist or growing as a creative is just the actual act of creation and making stuff. I've talked about this before, but I think that if you write something and then you just stop writing for years and years, you'll lose it. I do think that as with any other skill, writing or video making or drawing, making music, I think these are all use it or lose it skills. And so I have a theory about why a lot of bands get worse as they get older, why their music suffers. I think there are many reasons why everything Metallica has done over the last 30 years is lesser than the work that they did in their first 10 years as a band. I think there are many reasons for it, but I think one of the reasons for it is just that they haven't been creating consistently over the last 30 years. Like the band has these insane gaps between albums. Like their last album came out in 2023, and the last album before that came out 7 years earlier. The album before that came out 8 years earlier. The album before that came out 5 years earlier. The album before that came out like 6 years earlier, from Santanger to Reload. And then if you look at their early stuff, there's like a 1 year gap and then a 2 year gap, then a 2 year gap, then a 3 year gap. So the time frame is much more compressed, basically. Basically, I think there's a lot of value to be gained from just creating because of the act of creation, and that's something that I can say now with certainty. And I've been able to say this before with certainty, but like now I have a lot more certainty that it's very important to just create. It's very important to just make things consistently. Even if you don't want to, I do think that if you want to see any kind of success in this world, I think you have to work hard consistently. And it's not just work hard, but like you have to work on the right thing. There's a quote that I read that said that working on the right thing is more important than working hard. And I do think that's true, though I do think that you go a lot farther if you can work on both the right thing and work hard on it. I do think that the near deification of inspiration is really a mistake. I do think that there is a mistake being made whenever people worship the proper inspiration, whenever they look for the perfect moment to do something. I just think that's a bad idea overall because, you know, perfection very rarely, if ever, comes. And really, I do think that if you just work hard on something, then inevitably you will come to love it. Even if you don't feel inspired whenever you're making it, I do think that as you work hard on it, as you put pieces of yourself into it, then it will sort of become yours. And so in that sense, even if you're not excited whenever you first start something, I think that you will feel excited as you continue working on it. Though I also know that's not always the case. There are certain things that I've worked on that, you know, I'm not all that excited about, to be honest. But the thing is that you kind of have to pass through those things. You have to pass through the things that you're not excited about in order to get to the things that you are excited about and the things that you do love. But really, I guess that all I'm saying with this video is that it's important to create, and it's important to create on a schedule. It's important to create consistently. It's important to not wait for your muse. Don't wait for your inspiration. For the most part, I think that you just have to pick something and start on it and work on it consistently until it's finished, and you will grow to love it. And so I guess that's what I have to say about creating by schedule. So thank you for watching. Have a nice night, and goodbye.